Here we have a much smaller plantain. Leaves look pretty similar though. As you can see, this is what their flower stalks look like. Now imagine the bigger plant I just showed you with a flower stalk, like 3 times taller than this. So this is essentially just a miniature version of the other plant I showed you. Most of the plants are actually around this size, especially the ones growing in the driveway, but some are huge like the other. But this is just as edible as the other species, or variety, or whatever the big one is. So this is a tiger daylily plant. Unfortunately, this time of year they don't have any flowers anymore. These are the remnants of the flower stalks. However, the flowers are edible. They actually taste very good. I've eaten a few of them. Unfortunately, there aren't a lot of these plants in the yard, though, so I don't eat too many flowers. But they taste very good, actually. As a matter of fact, out of all the wild plants I've eaten from my yard, they taste better than any. But this time of year, unfortunately, they are not blooming anymore. Now, keep in mind, tiger daylilies are not tiger lilies. They are not the same thing. In fact, tiger lilies are poisonous. So, keep that in mind. I'm not quite sure what tiger lily leaves look like, but tiger daylily leaves are very grass-like, very long, and supposedly these are edible too when they're young. I've never tried eating them. They grow too tough as they get older. They're really not worth eating. Only the flowers are really worth eating from the plant. So here we have a red clover, and just like white clover, this is edible. You can see it has the large trifoliate leaves. They are kind of fuzzy. They do have short hairs on them, and they have the chevron pattern, typical of a lot of clover. And they have these red flowers. And both the flowers and leaves are edible. I've eaten the leaves. Flowers are good for tea. Same thing with white clover, which I'm going to show next. Here we have some white clover. Like I said, it's much smaller than the red clover leaves. And some of these have chevrons, some don't. I've noticed that. Some of them don't have the little white blotches. Sometimes they have these spots instead. Or sometimes they don't have any. These don't have any white flowers on them, but I think it's pretty clear that what white clover flowers look like. Those are edible as well. Once again, you can make a tea out of them. The leaves are edible. I've cooked them just like their red relatives. There is a plant, though, that looks a lot like white clover. It's called oxalis. Head over here. I've seen some earlier. Here we go. So here we have a oxalis plant. There's several species of these in my yard. Some are big, some are small. Small quantities, these actually are safe to eat, but they do contain oxalic acid, so if you're going to eat it, use it as just like a little bit of a seasoning or something like that, or a garnish or something. Do not eat these in large quantities. I have never tried eating these. If I do, it probably will be a little garnish on something. But this looks a lot like white clover, except for the yellow flowers that grow on them. And they do grow a little differently. These can grow very tall. They can get much taller than these guys. Here we have a surprisingly edible plant, greenbriar. So deal with these, you have to eat them when they're young. So these soft, edible leaves here, Can't eat these though. These guys are too tough. This part. Same thing here. The young stem, also edible when it's soft before it grows those nasty spikes. And tendrils as well. Tendrils are edible. Supposedly, greenbriar fruit and root is edible. I have not tried the root yet. These plants don't seem to have any fruit on them, so unless something changes and they start producing fruit, I'm probably not going to be trying that either, simply because it's unavailable. But I do eat the leaves, young stems, when they're soft and they don't have the spikes. Here's a wild grapevine that sprouted in my yard a couple of years ago. It hasn't produced any fruit, but from research I found out this is in fact a grape. And there's a vine that looks very similar to grape though, but there is a couple ways to differentiate them. Easiest way, look at the tendrils. On the grapes, the tendrils are forks. Notice forks out here. On the other vine, this is not the case. It does have tendrils, but they're not forked like this. And the other way to tell a difference is the fruit. The grapes and the fruit from this poisonous vine look very similar, except on the inside. The seeds on the grape are round. Seeds from this poisonous grape look-alike are crescent-shaped. They are not round. That's the best way to differentiate them. Here I have a blackberry vine growing along the ground. This time of year the fruit isn't growing anymore. It's past that season. Obviously they have these toothed leaves. They actually look a bit like poison ivy, but it's not. And they also have these vines that have a lot of little spines on them, so be careful if you ever pick the blackberries, because those do hurt. I recommend wearing gloves. Strongly recommend wearing gloves if you're going to pick the berries. The blackberries from this plant are unusually sweet. They're not very tart. They're sweet and they're small. They're just as edible as the store-bought ones, though.